Hello everybody, welcome back. So this week we're going to be forging some early Anglo-Saxon hinges, and these are based off a set from the Dover-Buckland Anglo-Saxon cemetary. Now we're going to be forging these on the Anglo-Saxon Anvil I made last week, and we're also going to be using one of my Anglo-Saxon hammers and something similar to an Anglo-Saxon currency bar, and we're also going to be manipulating everything with some Anglo-Saxon tongs. So we are going to Anglo-Saxon the bejesus out of this. The main difference is my coke fire, which is modern, and is run off an electric fan. So to start off with, obviously, we're going to get the metal hot, and using the crosspeen on the hammer, I am going to start drawing that out to a thickness of approximately 1/8 of an inch, 3/16 of an inch. So it took a little while because the hammer's not a particularly heavy hammer. And as you're drawing it out, keep those edges dressed. And overall, aim for a even thickness. Now, this was my first time forging on this little Anglo-Saxon anvil, and I must say I quite enjoyed it. Obviously the hammer's quite light and the anvil doesn't have a massive surface area, but it feels very similar to using a power hammer, because completely by coincidence the face of the hammer matches the width of the face of the anvil. So with the piece forged out, I will do some marks on it. The first mark is approximately 1/2 inch from the end of the bar, the next one is about 1 inch, then 1/2 inch, then 1 inch. And these are going to be the 2 halves of the hinge. So I've never come across an Anglo-Saxon centre dot, so I'm using my chisel to mark these. And the metal is still slightly warm from having been forged to section. At that stage I'll heat it up and I will sever the length which I need for the 2 halves. You can then just tap it with a hammer, bend it back and forth a bit, and it will shear off for you. So with that done, I will then cut the piece of metal in half, and that'll give me the 2 halves of the hinge. I'm doing exactly the same thing, cutting most of the way through and bending it free. So the first half of the hinge, I will come in at a slight angle and do a double set down. The reason you're doing it at a slight angle is to prevent it from galling. And I will just draw out that tab into a nice long rounded section. So go through the routine of drawing it out square, then rounding it. I'll just dress these shoulders by coming over the edge of the anvil and straight down on top of the hinge. So with that drawn out, I will come over to the bick and I will start rounding this. Make sure it's in line. And I will just get a bit more out of that round by just holding the half of the hinge up and coming straight down on the eye. Get to the angle I want. So I'll now take the second piece and I will start rounding off the top of the edge, because we're going to hot punch this, and if we have it square, then when we hot punch it round it will develop devil's ears. So I don't have much of a surface to work on because the anvil is quite small, so I'm having to stand it up here and come straight down on it. Keep that thickness in check as well, as you're pretty much upsetting the end of the material. I'll then come in with a round punch and punch the first side of the hole, and come in from the other side, drive that slug through. Then I'll actually use a bolster plate because I don't have a pritchel hole on this anvil. Bolster plates were known in the Anglo-Saxon era. There are quite a few examples surviving. And that should drive the slug out, and you have the other half of the hinge pretty much done. So I will come over to the bick again and I will just dress the outside of that punched hole and just get that tidied up a bit. And whilst it's at a low temperature, I'm going to planish the material. You'll have noticed I've not brushed it once, and that's because I've seen no evidence of the Anglo-Saxons having used brushes. Now, they wouldn't have had a clinker problem because they wouldn't have been using coke, they'd have been using charcoal, but they would still have had a scale problem. So planishing it will reduce the damage done by the scale. So I'll then come back to the anvil and I will unbend that eye and thread on the second half of the hinge and close the eye up. And the next thing I will do is I will take a welding heat on it and I will, using the peen, forge weld the end of the eye down. Now, it takes a bit of practice to forge weld such thin section, but I'm doing it fluxlessly as well. So have a practice with that. So give it a bit of a straighten, dress the edges from any deformation or burning that might have occurred. And again, I'll go over and planish this. So with the hinge assembled, I will punch the fixing holes, and there's only one fixing hole per half of the hinge. Again, this is based on an original. So punch from one side, drive the slug through from the other side, and spit it out with the bolster blade. Now you'll notice that the eye of the hinge needs to be facing downwards when you first punch the hole. Otherwise it'll be in the way for when you try and drive the slug through. So the final thing I'll do is I will get a nice dull heat on it and I will rotate the hinge, and that will open up both of the eyes so that they slide freely between each other. And here we have an Anglo-Saxon style hinge, forged from wrought iron in the form of a currency bar on a Anglo-Saxon style anvil with an Anglo-Saxon style hammer with some Anglo-Saxon style tongs. So those of you who asked to see this anvil in use, I hope that you consider your wish granted. So thanks a lot for watching. I've enjoyed making this quite a lot. And I will see you on the next one. Thanks a lot to my Patreon donors for supporting this channel. You're a brilliant bunch of chaps. Here is my current list of Patreon donors. Again, thanks a lot guys, and I will see you all on the next video. Bye!